Nothing like a battle for first place this weekend in Carbondale. Weekends continue to add and get bigger as we go along throughout the season. And, of course, senior weekend as well. It's the last time this weekend at Charlotte West Stadium. Coach, where did the time go? It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm wrong saying that.
And that's where we talk about this every year, that April will fly. And I think our roster is sensing that already. So,
well, how do you feel heading into this weekend for your group?
Yeah, I think we're as good as we've been. Probably headed in the right direction. I wouldn't say we need to peak right now, but we're definitely, after last week, very impressed with some of the things we've done. I saw last week's stat line with the Illinois game included, and that's as good as we've been. I think we hit 420-something last week and filled at 1,000, and an ERA well under 1 as a team. So we feel good about it. I mean, there's a lot of momentum, which is what you want going through these last 3 or 4 weeks. So
we have talked time and time again about Maddie Groff and what she continues to do this year. And as we get towards the end of the year, I know your focus is on winning games, and you can't really focus on individual awards. All that stuff will take care of itself. But she's really in a category where she could be the first to be Player of the Year and Pitcher of the Year. And I should say Player of the Year, Freshman of the Year and Pitcher of the Year.
Yep.
What has separated her to really have a great shot to earn that accolade? Because there's been a lot of good freshmen. There's been a lot of good freshman pitchers that have been in this league, but to have the opportunity to possibly earn both.
Yeah, I think she has this. I was talking to Eric Lopez earlier over text, and it's just one of those things where she's a generational talent, but she's also a generational mindset, a very veteran. It's something that you don't teach players, especially pitchers that are that young. Her ability to go in the bullpen and sort of recraft a couple things weekly is really neat. Just some things she's been working on. She works very kind of silently. She'll have some ideas about what she wants to do. She'll have gone home and looked through the tape herself. A lot of times she'll watch some video and she has an idea of what she wants to do, and then she has Rylan right there with her, and they already have an idea probably about what they're going to do this weekend. We'll have a short discussion today and tomorrow in the last bullpens before we go in, but I can't stress enough just what she doesn't get caught up in the big moments, and she's so consistent in her work that there's not this up and down of freshman situation. She really does work like a veteran.
When you're going through the recruiting process and you're looking at players like Madia, you always maybe feel good about, I think she's made of the right stuff and got it, but what was a sign to you as you're looking at? I mean, you can obviously see her skill on the field, but what was it where you're like, there's something different about her, and why you really we're hoping that she would be a Saluki?
Yeah, she pitched behind some really big names like Jordy Ball, who's now at Nebraska, obviously, and then Ruby Milan, who's now at Washington. And she pitched very humbly behind them. She never needed that sort of spotlight that I think others needed. And you could just tell by talking to the family. They're sort of raised differently, raised right, I guess you would say, but Mom and Dad sort of kept them very grounded and just kept them working. Like, hey, that's great. That's last week, what you accomplished. We got to get back to work this week. And it was sort of a year-round thing for them. And I just think especially their parents just made sure that nobody's head got too big. I don't think either one of the kids are built like that. The twins are built like that. But they're super intelligent, super humble, and they just go back to work. And I think that's sort of probably been told to them since they were little itty-bitty kids and they wanted to join the sport of softball.
Well, one of the players that really emerged over the last week for you, or had an outstanding week, was Addie Baker.
Yeah.
I mean, a phenomenal week. She entered the week, I think, hitting about 229. She's now almost hitting 350, so it kind of gives you perspective of what type of week she had to raise all of her numbers. Was that expected? Was that coming? What have you seen from her, even though maybe the numbers on the year didn't quite show that that's the type of production she's done consistently, but what have you seen from her day-to-day that you knew that at some point in time she would get hot and have a really good weekend?
Well, it's like we talk about it. It's always in there. You know, you don't lose it. You don't wake up one day and
Yeah.
it leaves your body. You know, she had an unfortunate practice injury a couple years ago, hurt her knee really bad, and I think it took some time to get back, but I think it took some time for her mentally to get back. And I know 2 or 3 weeks ago, I just looked at her and I was like, "Hey, let's go." Like, I think you're the missing link. And we don't have a lot of holes in the lineup, but I was like, imagine somebody going from Jackie Liss to Warwick to Hamilton to Jones to you, and then here comes Austin and Kaler and Lee, who's hitting 400 over the last 8 games. And I was like, what's the deal? And she said, I don't know, but she's always willing to go back and try. And I think we just sort of dropped the mechanics and said, let's just go let the swing rip and let's see ball hit ball.
Yeah.
And, you know, instead of trying to tinker, and I think all of a sudden she just didn't need to feel perfect to hit the ball really hard. And she's seeing the ball so well right now that, I mean, she has been, I think we were talking before we came on, she hit 7 something over this last week. I mean, everything she hit was just an absolute rocket. So I think that's, you know, sometimes it's just about, we were rotating kind of through the DH sometimes and trying to find a really good fit. And she just stepped up and took her opportunity. It's what you tell players all the time. Like, when you get your time, get your opportunities in, and that's what she did.
Well, and it wasn't that she was just slugging, that she was just hitting as well over the weekend. She was just
Yeah.
finding a way to get on base, too,
Yeah.
which sometimes, as you go throughout a season, you'll see those that are going through a good hot stretch, but then occasionally, like, may have some strikeouts mixed in there. But, I mean, for her, not only was she hitting, but she was getting on base for
Yeah.
you and basically passing the baton and giving another opportunity to another teammate in the lineup.
And that's when you know players are good, right? I mean, when they're taking stuff they can't hit really hard and they're hitting stuff they can. And it was like, I mean, it was like a click. It was just a 1 day practice thing. And I noticed just her crushing balls in BP, and I'm like, it's just time to get her in there. She's always had it. She played for a summer club where she was probably overlooked in the sense of like a ton of Big Ten players, a ton of SEC players, and Addie Baker was the one on that club team that came up with some big hits. So when those other kids weren't seeing the ball well, we called her like big game Addie Baker, because Addie Baker was the one that swung the bat, you know, in a national championship game or in a big tournament win over the summer. So she's always had that sort of niche of like, she can kind of be on a low streak and then get on this huge hot streak where she cannot miss. And I think she'll probably be in it for the rest of the year. She was in it last year when we went to Utah and just hit some balls hard.
It was an area that you touched up on going into the Evansville series this past weekend of how last year got off to a good start in the series, and the last 2 games did not go your way.
Yeah.
You kind of look at this past weekend, you get the run ruled win in game 1, and then early fall behind 3-0
Yep.
in the second game. It obviously flipped and flipped in a big way.
Yeah.
But what did you like about your team's response on the weekend, Coach Sewell, of you get 2 run ruled wins, and the last one you really had the grit out as well. Give Evansville credit.
Yep.
They were battling you for every inning in that final game
Yep.
on Sunday. But to know that after a year where you got off to a good start, could not finish that series, to come back and face a little adversity in game 2 and really just, I mean, you didn't just answer the door, you knocked it down.
Yeah, we talked about it Friday after the game, and I said, hey, I think we all remember how this went last year, so we don't need a new rehearsal. And that 3-run thing is a bad pitch call on my part. And the kid, who's a great athlete, gets a hold of a changeup that's been dumped pretty much and thrown as well as it can be thrown, and it goes off the left field foul pole. You know, it's just one of those perfect situations. But I thought Maddie came in and wasn't rattled by it, so then the offense came in and wasn't rattled by it. And in fact, she had that kid struck out on the pitch before, we thought. And I think she was comfortable giving up that hit. I mean, it was just a hit that happened to have some other runners on, and it was a good pitch on her part, just a bad pitch call on my part. So that's where your veterans get together and they just start scoring and answering. And I think on Sunday we knew Weatherford was going to come back, and she couldn't do what she did Friday night. She had to change the game plan, and she did, and she mixed really well. And that's the Weatherford we thought we were going to get Friday night. And, you know, those games are emotional on Sundays because you've now run ruled a team twice and they don't want to be run ruled again. So They came back at us, but just a good response. I think this team has responded like that all year long. Rain, snow, adversity, travel issues, things like that. They've just come back and played ball.
I know it's always a lot of emotion on senior weekend, but the
Yeah.
one thing you want to do is when you have a senior weekend is you want it to mean a lot, other
Yeah.
than just it's your last time playing at home.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, you look at the conference standings, Belmont a game and a half back. They played Murray State in the midweek. They split a doubleheader with them, so they're now a game and a half back. But it's a battle for first place this weekend, as I mentioned, and Maya Johnson, as great as Maddie Agroff has been, I think there's no question she's the leader in the clubhouse in terms of pitcher of the year. Maya Johnson not too far off in
Right.
terms of the numbers. What has made her so good, especially within the league, because these are the only two pitchers that have sub-1 ERAs right
Yeah.
now in league-only games when you factor just conference stats.
Yeah, she can, with a variety of pitches, make you go all over the zone. So if you're not paying attention to what you want to hit, you'll swing at everything else. And when she's on, she has she has good velocity, good changeup, both sides of the plate. I think she's healthy this year. She feels good this year. You could tell she's hardy. She's getting a Friday and a Sunday start, often starting big games like Ohio State and some of those other clubs. I just think 1 year in the league has gone by for her, and she's very comfortable. You can tell on the mound. And her team plays behind her. I mean, I think they're a well-gelled team a year into the Valley. I think they've had some good home games. They've been a great road team as well. But I do think in the sense it is a battle for first place, but it's also, you know, we've talked about this all year long. We cannot clinch this thing Friday, Saturday, or
No, yeah.
Sunday, And with the emotion of senior day, I was talking to a couple of the seniors. I'm like, hey, let's just stay in our routine and, know when you're 50 and you have your own kids, or you're 75 and you have your own grandkids, you won't tell them about what happened on senior day. You will tell them about your career. Your careers are cemented, one of the most decorated classes in a long time. So that's a done deal. Nobody can take that away from you.
I know media folks like me, Trude, and others, we can talk about those things
Yeah.
of is it really hard, Coach Sewell, at all? I'm sure it probably hinges a lot on the team makeup that
Yeah.
you have, which we've talked a lot about your team this year. You really love the makeup of them, which probably gets into what your answer is going to be to this question. But how hard is it I've always been impressed with coaches who have teams that are so highly successful year after year, and they find a way, even when things are going really well, to keep the chip there,
Yeah.
to not get complacent
Yeah.
or listen or buy into outside noise. What's the most difficult part of that as a coach, to make sure that your message is consistent with your team and that you're like, okay, I know they're not buying into the noise, they're not listening, battle for first place. It's literally just most important thing is game one on Friday.
Yeah, I think it's your big time players continue to play well in big time games. They don't go away from their routines, they don't go away from their processes, things like that. And then the younger players will follow, and that's what has happened with this club. There's a standard there, and if you just stick to the standard, game by game by game, everything's going to work out. We didn't change anything this week. We stayed in very much in our routine. Saturday does have a lot of ceremonial stuff going on, but there's no one game really this year that's going to, blow us up or not blow us up. It's very much like one Friday, one Saturday, one Sunday, and we've tried to stick to that plan. We talked about it. It's like it's an important day because you always want to recognize the achievements of those that build and continue, the consistency and the success here. But there's the interesting part about having it on April 20th. There's still a lot of softball that will
Yeah.
go on. So you can't put a lot of weight in one day or one weekend. I think championships, and we talked about this, championships get lost in the weekends, the other weekends, not necessarily in the 1 versus 2, unless maybe it occurs on the last weekend. But a lot of times you lose that or win it by taking care of your business in other areas. And we focused, I know, more this year on, we can't drop dumb ones all over
Yeah.
the place and expect to be in it at the end of the season. And I think a little bit more focus on that has helped us. And again, you have 8 seniors, right? that's a lot of leadership when almost over half your club is that experienced.
Well, we talked about Maya, very deservingly so with her
Yeah.
numbers, but what stands out about the team for Belmont as well? Because for them to be in this position with you,
Yeah.
they have to have a good team as well behind them.
Yeah, they're hitting the ball extremely well, and they're playing defense extremely well, which, when you have a great pitching staff, as we do, it gets a lot easier with Summers and her pitching well. And I think they've been really consistent, and, they have been able to probably use a chip on their shoulder as well to try to get into this league and establish themselves immediately. They've been super impressive on film too. They've had some big swings and big moments because they've had some tight ball games going into the seventh where they've had to win it on the road and win it, on a Sunday. So they've worked themselves into a great position to really hunt from behind, and sometimes that is the best way to do it. And I think they'll come prepared. I think their coaching staff does a great job of just making sure that they know their plan. But I think by the end of the year last year, we were paying good attention to them. We didn't know a lot about them last year.
Yeah.
As they entered the league, we were at Belmont, just didn't know a lot about our surroundings. And I think this year we understand who Belmont is and what they're capable of.
And obviously, when they came into Charlotte West last year in the conference tournament,
Yep.
needed every out to work with.
Yes, yeah, and we saw both there, and I thought we were much more settled with them. Johnson came out and threw well, but we didn't strike out as much. We walked a couple times, got back to us, and then they jumped out early, and then we were able to kind of calmly claw our way back in. And I'll never forget Riley Hamilton just turning to the dugout and saying, "Guys, we're gonna win this game. So figure it out," and we did, and then Warwick walks it off. And I think we'll always have that fuzzy feeling in Charlotte West.
Oh, no question. It's been a great home atmosphere. And, of course, this weekend it will start with 5 o'clock on Friday, then the Senior Day ceremony on Saturday. That game first pitch at 2 o'clock, and then noon for the Sunday finale. Coach Sewell, good luck this weekend. Hard to believe that it is the final weekend at home. Going to look forward that I'll be here and be able to at least catch 2 of those games at the spring football game on Saturday. But, Coach Sewell, thanks so much for the time, and look forward to catching up with you after a successful weekend.
Thanks, Luke.